So this video is about my healing journey with chronic illness. I have chronic fatigue syndrome. I've had it for 9 years, although I was diagnosed 7 years ago. And there's a lot of things that I've done over the years which have helped me, which have eliminated symptoms or reduced some symptoms or have made all sorts of differences in lots of different ways. This video is really a sort of whistle stop tour or an overview of all of the things that I've used that have helped me, and I hope that if you're just diagnosed, that this video will give you an idea of the things that are out there. You can look into them, or if you're someone who's been diagnosed for a while, you've tried a few things and have helped a bit, but you've still got healing to do, then I hope this gives you some ideas. Because these things helped me doesn't necessarily mean they'll help you, but I hope that you'll be able to discern and pick out what maybe resonates with you and look into that further. So I will mention the names of some of the people and the companies that I've worked with, and so that you can look those up and have a look if you want. I'm going to do them in order of when I sort of started to use these things or came across them, in my journey chronologically. So I have them written down in front of me so I don't get mixed up if you see me sort of looking down a bit. But I'll just get started because I don't want this video to be too long and it could go on forever. I will make other individual videos about each of the different things, or the ones that have been really important and pertinent to me moving forward, so that you can get more information of them, and those videos will pop up further down the line. So the first thing that helped me, or could have helped me sooner if I'd really wrapped my head around it, was resting. Just to stop and rest. And doctors were telling me to rest, people I worked beside were telling me to rest, and I'm saying, yeah, I'll sit down for a wee while and have a rest now and again. No, I needed weeks, months maybe, off work, not running about trying to do 10 things at once. I needed to properly rest, and I really wasn't getting that. And eventually a manager from work took me in and said, go home, you look terrible, do not come back here until you're better. Because what had been happening was I was going off work for 2 or 3 days and then being back for a week or 10 days and then being off for 2 or 3 days again, and just bouncing backwards and forwards like that. And I really should have been focusing on myself and not so much on my work. So yeah, stopping and resting. I then went from excessively oversleeping to not being able to sleep at all. And what helped me then, or along that sort of journey of going from sleeping too much to not getting sleep, was meditation, guided meditation. Now, I was trained in mindfulness before I was unwell, and used to use that regularly, but found that I really was struggling with using mindfulness because my mind was racing all the time. I was really stressed about being off work. I was really stressed about becoming this person who was unwell and all the symptoms and everything that was going along with it. And I found online guided meditation was much better for me at that point in time. Very guided, so sort of constant speaking throughout the meditations and guidance really helped me if I couldn't listen to things that had too much sort of blank space, because my head just filled it with lots of worries and things. So guided meditation, and amongst that I also found something called yoga nidra, which means yogic sleep. Is a type of relaxation, a meditation, and I've actually trained now as a yoga nidra facilitator, and I'll put some videos up, but that really helped me with sleep as well. Eventually I had to unfortunately go on to sleep medication, and I really didn't want to go on to what is traditionally known as sleep medication because it is known to be very addictive. I now take something called Nortriptyline, which is a sister medication to amitriptyline, which is something which is commonly prescribed for people with chronic fatigue syndrome. It was originally invented, if you like. That's not the word I'm trying to think of. But as an antidepressant many decades ago, and they found that in small doses it actually helps with sleep. So that's something that I've been taking now for a number of years, and that has helped. I had to go down that road, because you absolutely, we all, you don't need to have chronic illness to need sleep, but once you start not getting sleep, you'll know how much you need sleep, and if it has to be medication that helps with that, then there are other routes you can look at, but I had to take medication. After that, I was referred to someone to help with fatigue management, and really what they did was taught me pacing. Pacing is so helpful, and I see on a lot of forums and Facebook pages and things for people with chronic fatigue syndrome that they're struggling with pacing, don't really understand it, don't know if I'm doing it right, or I've tried pacing and it's just not working for me. And I would say that you cannot just do pacing from having read about it. Yes, that's a start, absolutely. Educate yourself on it, try and do as much as you can, but I would say that you need someone else to help you with that, to be objective and looking at what you're doing and how you're spending your energy, if you like. Now, I used to work as an occupational therapist. I worked in the field of mental health. I was referred to an occupational therapist who was working in the field of neurology. She worked for the neurological department in the local hospital, and she ran a fatigue management clinic, because there are many neurological conditions, including chronic fatigue syndrome, where fatigue is a major issue. And although I had the background and the training in sort of breaking down activities, looking at activity analysis, looking at pacing, because this is something that can help in all sorts of different conditions, you cannot be your own therapist. And as I say, you need someone objective looking at your sort of daily diaries of activity and looking at where you don't need to be doing that. You don't need to be using your energy to make, teenage children their packed lunch for school. They're old enough to make their own sandwiches. You do not need to be the person who is clearing up the water on the bathroom floor after the whole family have had their showers. There are other people that can be delegated to. But it's very difficult to see that yourself, especially if those things are part of your role. And I don't even have kids, and I didn't have a role like that, but I know from speaking to other people that's often an issue, delegating to other people in their family. But yeah, it is very difficult. There were things for me as well that I felt, well, I have to be doing this. I have to be having a shower every day, even though it was so difficult. And I thought, no, I don't. I'm not even going out of the house. I was housebound at the time. This just can't happen. It just couldn't. And so yeah, there were a lot of things that I had to change. But yeah, get help with pacing. After that, what helped me were dietary changes and taking supplements. So initially I worked with a local nutritionist who helped me put in place sort of changes around settling my blood sugar levels, which really have an impact on your stress levels. And yeah, so I was told to eat more protein, eating a lot more sort of green leafy veg, making changes from white rice to brown rice, etc. All of that helped a bit. She also started me in supplements such as magnesium and fish oils. Now they alone, 2 weeks of those alone, and I was able to get rid of the horrendous pain that I had in the back of my neck going up into my head that I'd only ever experienced before in my life when I had viral meningitis as a child. But 2 weeks of these supplements and that pain was gone, and I've never had it since. I still take magnesium. and she also gave me an adrenal supplement. So that sort of helped, but further down the line, I discovered the work of a Dr. Sarah Myhill, who is a doctor who sort of specialises in chronic fatigue syndrome and ME, and she has a specific protocol of supplements and also a diet plan that she advocates or purports helps people with chronic fatigue syndrome. So I would recommend having a look at her website, because doing her protocol really helped me, made a big difference to me. Within 6 weeks I was noticing a difference in my energy levels. Unfortunately, I did at one point start to get worse. There was a period of time where I went through a lot of stress. I eventually, after sort of 18 months of being off sick constantly, lost my job. I had to sell my house. I was having to claim for what in this country are known as benefits, which is basically, social security or social welfare, or welfare as it's known in some countries. And the system for that in the UK is, and I can only describe it as barbaric. So I had the stress of trying to go through that, and I became a lot worse. And one of the main symptoms, which is now really coming to the fore, were intolerances. It started with food intolerances, and I was already, off gluten, off dairy, off sugar. But more and more things were starting to cause me problems. It then got to the point where I couldn't wash my hair because I couldn't tolerate any shampoos. I couldn't have clothes drying in my house because I couldn't bear the smell of the things that we were using to wash the clothes. My boyfriend couldn't spray his deodorant or wear put aftershave on in the house. I couldn't bear it. All these things were affecting me. More and more foods were affecting me. My eyes would be watering, my skin would be itching, I would be coming out in hives. I was having debilitating migraines, which were depleting my energy, depleting my mood. And for days I'd be in bed after these migraines just from eating. Sometimes things like green leafy veg were causing it. I was reacting to everything. I could only tolerate 9 foods at one point. And I discovered a lady called Michaela Rose, who runs the Pure Health Clinic, who has experienced the same thing. Now, she said to me, have you ever experienced any trauma in your life? And I said, no, I've had a fairly normal life, a bit of bullying at school, nothing else. And she sent me a questionnaire and she asked me to fill it out. It was called the Adverse Childhood Events Questionnaire, or the ACE questionnaire. And I think what most of us think trauma is, is a sort of some big, massive, scary event that happens in your life. And actually, trauma can be more insidious, is maybe the word, than that. And so I filled out this questionnaire, had a score which indicated, not particularly high, but had a score that indicated there were some underlying traumas. And she said, that could be a factor in this. But she had an appointment with that lady. She said, you cannot cut any more food out, you just can't. Although she did say to me that one of the things I was eating was probably a bit of a trigger, and so I cut that one thing out. And she then told me about a protocol for getting my gut healed, but I couldn't tolerate any of the supplements in the protocol. So she then said, okay, we need to come at this from the mind. And she recommended a hypnotherapist that she had worked with. The hypnotherapist was called Julie Poole, and you can find her, I think, at Julie Poole online. And she worked with me for those food intolerances, for healing my gut. But that also was giving me, I was feeling I had a lot more energy. There were a lot of changes happening. I knew hypnotherapy really, really helped me at that stage. And I'll make a whole video about that later on. After that, I was, I had a bit more energy. I was able to spend a bit more time out of bed during the day. And I started to try yoga again. Yoga was something that I had done in my life well before I got ill. and had been unable to do when I was ill. I had tried, but it was just exhausting. I just couldn't do it. And I had now become so deconditioned because I'd spent so many years, almost totally housebound, only out for hospital appointments, or doctor appointments, and was spending around 18 hours on average in bed. So I was really deconditioned. Couldn't manage anything close to a yoga pose, but I found this video by a woman called, or a channel on YouTube called Flexi Ladies Yoga. She had a video for chronic fatigue syndrome, or yoga for chronic fatigue syndrome, and I managed to do the first 9 minutes of that video, which was all done lying on the floor. And I used to do 9 minutes of that 25-minute video, and I think it took me about a year, maybe not quite a year, maybe 6 to 9 months to work up to doing that sort of 20-25-minute video. But that was a start, and I'm now doing yoga regularly and yoga on a daily basis, because it's not just the stretching and the movement that was good for my muscles and just for getting blood flowing. Also the breathing that you're doing while you're doing the movements was actually very good for calming down my system and good for the nervous system, which is essentially what is mostly impacted and affected when you have chronic fatigue syndrome. After that, I tried to get into doing some exercise. It's a very contentious issue. Exercise in chronic fatigue syndrome. Should we be doing it? Should you not be doing it? And I had unfortunately worked with a physio early on in my sort of diagnosis of having it, who just could not comprehend that the very low level exercises she was giving me were making me more tired, and so just denied that and said, no, they can't be making you more tired, these are the exercises you have to do. And eventually I just had to trust my body and say, you are making me worse. But I was now at a point where I felt I could manage a low level of exercise, and I was trying to do that but kept overdoing it myself. And so I turned to a company called CFS Health, run by a man called Toby Morrison, who has also experienced chronic fatigue syndrome. And I worked with one of his coaches, Rhea, who everyone that works for him has experienced chronic fatigue syndrome. And she was great and really sort of helping me get over my sort of fear and mindset about exercise, but also in really stripping things back and getting me to start at a really, really low level, and just judging kind of where we went from there. So that was helpful. So I used them. What I then came across was Reiki, energy healing. There was a woman who lived locally, and I can't remember what had made it come into my head, and I searched it and thought, okay, there's this woman locally, and that's been really helpful in all sorts of areas. But my initial first session, I literally stood up from that session, and when I got up I was standing straighter, I felt more energetic. That's made a big difference. And I've actually gone on to train in energy healing myself. That also sort of started me on a road to looking into spirituality. That has also helped me. That's helped me change my perspective a lot around my illness and around what I've been through because I've been ill, and about my life in general. It's quite difficult to describe, and again, this will be a whole other video, but I started to link in with some meditation groups online who were doing more sort of spiritual meditation, and I signed up for something called a year of conscious living, or practical spirituality, and you can find they have a YouTube channel called Children of Infinity, and provide free content. That was something that really helped me. I then enrolled in a course called Reset Your Nervous System. That's run by the Optimum Health Clinic. Again, that's a clinic run by someone who has experienced chronic fatigue syndrome themselves. And I did that programme. It was a 12-week programme, all done online. And I really learned so much about myself doing that programme, looking at personality types and how that feeds into, you know, perfectionist tendencies and sort of just you know, achiever sort of patterns, and how that feeds into chronic fatigue syndrome, and how that one can make you ill, but how it can also keep you stuck in illness because you have these patterns that you're constantly repeating. It also looked at our thinking and how our thinking actually affects us, not just mentally, but affects us on a physiological level, how your thinking can trigger changes in your nervous system, which can then impact your, you know, immune function, your stress levels, and all sorts of things. So that again, I could do a whole video about that. That was really, really good. So yeah, that's maybe something for some people to look into. What that also made me do, you know, that really exploring myself and finding out about myself, and really becoming more aware of my thinking and my patterns of thinking, was to realise actually that I was quite an anxious person. I knew I was a bit of a worrier, but yeah, I was quite anxious. And so I then took a few sessions with a counsellor who I found locally, and also found that quite helpful just to sort of talk things out with someone else. The next thing I tried was EFT, or emotional freedom technique. I have worked with a practitioner on this. I think I had 4 or 5 sessions with someone, but this is something that you can effectively or essentially do on your own as well, maybe not as in depth, but there's lots of videos on YouTube about this. And essentially what you're doing is tapping on certain meridian points in your body. So I think it was the Chinese who sort of plotted this meridian map, or map of meridians where they are in the body, and that's where you know, things like acupuncture come from. You know, you are puncturing the points where these meridians are, and acupressure is putting pressure in those points. Well, EFT, you're tapping on those points, so you tap on particular points in your upper body whilst you're focusing on maybe an emotion you're feeling, maybe a symptom you're having, a headache, or, you know, extra fatigue, a flare in your, a flare up of symptoms, whatever that is. And you can tap on that and you see sort of certain scripting or mantras, but you can look that up in videos online. That's something that's really helping me. You know, even just a symptom crops back up again, I'll tap on it, and it helps to sort of release that. Something else I've just started trying that I'm finding really helpful is TRE, which can stand for tension release exercise or trauma release exercise. And effectively what you're doing is reteaching your body how to shake. Now, if you think about when you get, you know, a fright, you might get a bit shaky, or if something happens that really impacts you, you might shake, you might say, oh, my legs are like jelly. That's a normal physiological response that our nervous system elicits, and it's to help us release that sort of nervous energy around that incident or whatever it is that's happened. But over time and over our lives, we train our systems to stop that. You know, when we experience that shaking, we'll go, oh, I'm shaking, and we try and tense our body and we try to stop that. But actually we shouldn't. We should be embracing that. That is our nervous system and our body getting rid of that sort of tension and the trauma of whatever's happened. So this TRE is about reteaching your body to shake, and just letting it release, you know, tension and trauma that we hold in the nervous system. If you think about all the tension that most of us hold, you know, particularly people talk about the shoulders, you know, and in your jaw. Also people hold a lot of tension in their lower back and their hips. It's where the major kind of muscle groups are in the body. TRE can help release some of that. So I've just started doing that. I'm working with a woman called Vicky Cook at TRE Scotland. And yeah, I'm finding that a really interesting journey. Something else that's been helping me over the last sort of 4 or 5 months is coaching. So I have been getting coaching from a woman who runs what's called the Self Healers Society. Her name's Sarah Harvey. She has experienced fibromyalgia, has healed that, and is now coaching other women with, chronic illness. And that's been really helpful. I think that when you get a diagnosis, or when you've been sort of living with a chronic illness for the amount of time that I have, you almost forget what your previous life was like. You've become this person who, doesn't go out much, and, who's always sort of unwell and isn't very stable and is up and down, and that's sort of your mindset. And you don't always recognise and see the progress that you're making, or actually, realise what you're still capable of in your life. And I've got to a point now, where I'm no longer spending 18 hours in bed and only capable of, just about getting myself a meal and maybe getting myself a shower. I'm a long way on from that now. And she's really helped me, I suppose, to see that, but also to focus on, right, okay, what else do you want to be doing in your life? So that's been really helpful. Not just in sort of the mindset of it, but actually as I've started to do new things, like start a YouTube channel, actually that's helped increase my energy levels. I feel better about myself. There's a lot of impact from that. I've also recently, and this came about through getting more into spirituality, trained as an energy healer. I use Seraphim Blueprint healing, and the healing itself, I can heal myself, that helps me, but also in sending healing energy to other people also helps me too. I'm getting the benefits from that, and yeah, that's only been in the last sort of 4 or 5 months, but that's been really interesting. That's been a really interesting journey. The other thing that I spoke about on my channel, if you've been looking at some of the other videos, are my dreams. Now, I've had vivid dreams all my life, but I've been interpreting my dreams for the last 20 years, but only in the last few years have I really realised that our dreams are healing. Our dreams are telling us stuff. And I've been able to use that in helping me. And I used to have the same recurrent dream for years about blocking toilets, and it was always about, it really means that you're emotionally blocked. And a lot of these things that I've used, the EFT, the TRE, the speaking to a counsellor, the spirituality stuff, has really helped me, I think, address things that I never ever thought were part of, illness or chronic fatigue syndrome. But actually, I do have a lot of trauma, actually, in relation to how I was treated within this sort of conventional medicine world when I first became ill. And anyone with chronic fatigue syndrome will understand that. And I will do another video about medical abuse or medical gaslighting, as it's known as. And I still hold a lot of resentment and anger about some of the things that were said to me and some of the ways that I was treated, or rather not treated. So yeah, a lot of that is now releasing, and then when that's happening, that is also increasing my energy levels. So that's been a sort of whistle stop tour, but this is really only part one of this video, because I want to make a part two about some of the more subtle things that I've been able to just introduce into my life on a daily basis. Things like listening to certain types of music, or things like having, a certain type of crystal near me, or just smelling a nice essential oil. I'm going to go more into why and how that's important in part two, but also all of the things that I've listed today I will make individual videos about, because there's so much I can say about them. So I hope that that's been helpful, and I would like to just leave with a quote for people who are maybe losing heart or losing motivation, have been ill for a while and aren't finding things to help, or don't know where to go next. And it's it's an old one, you'll probably have heard it, but you know, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. You know, and that first step for me was just learning to rest and letting my body rest. And it's come a long way since there. So I'll leave you with that, and thanks for watching.